I now have the very pleasant, pleasurable duty of introducing our first speaker, Swami Brahmavidananda Saraswati. I have introduced Swamiji 6 times before in the same forum. So really scratching my head on what I can say new about Swamiji. But I am sure there are some new people who have logged in to this festival, who have not attended this festival before or not attended it often enough. So I will give you a brief picture into Swami Brahmavidananda Saraswati. He is a student of, like I said, Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati. He has spent 7 rigorous years in Rishikesh learning at Pujya Swamiji's feet. He is a very contemporary teacher of Vedanta and has been teaching for more than 35 years in Bombay and probably, in my estimate, has taught more than 500 students during his period, and more importantly, has helped create teachers of Vedanta. He is the founder, like I said, of the Aarsha Vidya Foundation and the Vedic Wisdom Festival, which we are now currently enjoying. I have also had the great fortune of being in a couple of corporate training programs along with Swamiji. And the Swamiji there is a very different Swamiji than when he's in a Vedanta class. I can tell you that. Because he metamorphoses, and I've seen this with my own eyes, so I can say it. He metamorphoses into a proper corporate trainer because he understands today's ethos. He understands what are the pressures that a corporate employee is going through at a workplace. And he is able to adapt his teachings to actually communicate with them. He doesn't practice his martial arts on any of the corporate employees, I promise you. But he's a great exponent. Sometimes he does get on the edge and wants to, but he doesn't. And he's a great exponent of martial arts. He's a disciplined martial arts student for many, many years. Fabulous teacher of Vedanta and has been acknowledged as a significant Mahatma by Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati himself. So I was driving down with him and I said, Swamiji, this is the seventh time I'm going to introduce you. Please tell me something. I want to say something different. And he says, what can be different in a Vedanta teacher's life? Right? Vedanta is my life and I continue teaching it and there's nothing different about it. The only thing different, before my Purvarshama, I was a marine engineer. Now I am teaching Vedanta. In my Purva Ashrama, the dollar was 8 rupees. Today the dollar is 85 rupees. That is the only difference, he said. And I think that was that was quite a statement to make. Swamiji, as usual, excited to listen to you about the shades of Dharma. He is going to be talking to us about shades of Dharma. Dharma is not black and white. It's got many shades of gray. And we will hear from Swamiji what these shades are, how they apply in our lives, and how we can learn from doing the right thing and doing the right thing at the right time. Swami Brahmavidananda Saraswati, welcome.
Nice to be back at the festival. I said I'll speak on the shades of Dharma. Then I'm looking at it, and the Mahabharata and the shades of Dharma can go on for a few days. Okay. So I'll try to give you some of the insights into it. In ancient India, there was a tradition of kingship, generally passing on parent and child. Not always the same case. Because the whole question of Mahabharata starts with the problem of succession. Today also we have the same problem, not in kingdoms, but in corporates, political parties, etc. So this problem, if you are looking at lineage, the last king in the lunar dynasty, the Kaurava, was actually speaking King Shantanu. He died when his kids were small. They all told Bhishma to take over the kingdom. Bhishma committed to Dharma. Said, no way. I have given my word that the kingdom is not mine and I am going to stick to it. A man, in many ways, uncompromising in Dharma. At the same time, he cared for the kingdom. Never sat on the throne, but he cared for the kingdom. Therefore, at that time, there were a lot of intrigues. Saying, let us knock off the two kids. Bhishma will be forced to take up the throne. So, Veda Vyasa, the authority on Dharma at that time, gave a simple solution. Is repeat your vow in the assembly with adding a clause to it that whoever sits on the throne of Hastinapura, my sword shall be at his service. Nobody will dare to go against you. Bhishma or Krishna Dvipayana, sorry, not Krishna Dvipayana, that is Vyasa. Bhishma or Devarataha is known, the one who rode with the gods. Yeah. Was a phenomenal warrior with great ruthlessness when necessary. So nobody will go against him. And that's exactly what he did. And he held the kingdom together until the kids grew up. But look at life is what happens when you're planning other things. So here, Bhishma is waiting for the kids to grow up. One of them will take over the empire. One dies of TB. The other is killed in battle. Now what? He thought he would prevent, but it's not possible. So they again came, nay, Bhishma, please, now at least take over the kingdom. He was still a young man. Those days, 50, 60, etc. was considered young, okay? No way. So there was a system at that time. So again, look at the whole thing. Even though the lineage was important, whatever you want to talk about, DNA, this, that, etc., lineage was important. We are progressive enough. The Dharma could be modified because Dharma depends upon Desha, Kala, Vaya, Avastha, etc. Time, place, situations, age, your standing in life, the period of your life. All this Dharma keeps changing. It is not permanent. So they said, okay, we will have kids by Niyoga. The queens will have kids by Niyoga. Something like your artificial insemination. There was a donor. That's all. Nothing artificial about it, but there was a donor. And this is approved by the assembly so that no question is raised about their right to be the king. I mean, how progressive the whole thing was. So first request was to Bhishma. He said, hey, they are my sister-in-laws. How can I go and sleep with them? Not possible. So then Satyavati, the Dowager Empress, asked her son, Vedavyasa. Vedavyasa was a rishi, a muni, beyond right and wrong. So he had no issues on it. Okay. But the princes, even though they agreed, if the princes had agreed, this would not happen. Okay. It's by mutual agreement only that something like this can happen. Even though they agreed, Vedavyasa was a person who would roam over the hills, the Himalayas. So his appearance was not exactly pleasant. Okay. Short, sturdy man, matted hair. Okay. not exactly a woman's idea of a lover. So one of the princesses kept her eyes closed right throughout. So the story goes, because of that, Dhritarashtra was born blind. The younger one became pale, so Pandu was born with vitiligo. So the queen, unhappy with both the things, sent Vyasa again one more try. But the queens didn't want it one more time. So he sent the maid. Now again, look at this, the attitude of that maid. He said, I understand your hair is matted because you don't bother and there's nobody to help you with it, to give you a haircut and a shave, or at least take off. So let me do that for you. Let me oil your hair, let me this thing. Let me give you a pedicure, manicure. It's all mentioned there. And then in the process, a bond develops because it's an intimate activity. Bond. And Vidura was born, the son of that maid. Now we have a peculiar situation. The eldest born, Dhritarashtra, is blind. So those days, blind people could not become king. You mean to say Indians were so biased against handicapped people? No. We are biased, if at all, in favor of them. Why? Kings led armies in battle. If the king was killed, battle was over. And a blind person, however great a warrior you are starting the battle with a handicap. You're not making love, you're making war. This is not something to be trifled with. So because of that, they said, hey, you have a handicap like that, you're handicapped as a warrior, therefore no. Okay, so the kingship goes to Pandu. Now Pandu is in a good position. Okay, fine. But he suffers a curse. With some Rishi, I don't want to go into the whole story here, that if he ever sleeps with any of his wife, he had two wives, Kunti and Madri. Sleeps with either of them, he will die. How do you get a heir for the kingdom now? So Pandu asked Dhritarashtra to step in for him for the time being, where he'll go to the forest to do tapas, to get himself rid of it. There is where Kunti reveals that she has this boon, that if she chants this mantra, keeping any devata in you, she'll get a child by that devata. So she has 3 children. Okay. Yudhishthira, okay, Bhima and Arjuna. And Madri has 2 children, Nakula and Sahadeva, from the Ashwini Kumara. Okay. Now remember, the royal lineage is stopped with Shantanu itself. Okay. Now you are in a funny situation. Who's going to be the king? Because Dhritarashtra's wife has got 100 kids. Pandu's wives have 5 kids. Pandu dies in the forest. So now there are 5 kids. Who will rule? Who is the right? Can you see? It is not black and white. You can't say Dhritarashtra's children had no right at all, because the royal lineage has stopped the Shantanu. But it is not always by birth. There have been cases in India, even before the Mahabharata, where if someone was found unfit, even if he was of royal lineage, he could be replaced. This is acceptable. And when Duryodhana was born, Vidura himself, his uncle, tells this man will be responsible for destroying the country. He should be abandoned or killed. For the sake of the nation, you can sacrifice one person. However, the whole nation will be affected. But naturally, Dhritarashtra couldn't do that. I can understand. A parent's love for the child makes you do funny things sometimes. Not only then, even now. You see that all the time. So now there are two claimants for the throne. And you all know the story, how it goes. So let us skip forward. One solution found against this was to split the country. With the Kauravas ruling from Hastinapura and a new capital being made by Yudhishthira and the Pandavas called Indraprastha. Exactly like India, Pakistan. It didn't work there, it won't work now. Why? Because one person will always want that also. Ladke liya Pakistan, haske lega Hindustan. This is the slogan the jihadis use. Same thing that time also. There's so much of envy and jealousy. Okay? Especially when Duryodhana and his brothers were invited to have a look at Indraprastha, which brings us to another myth in the Mahabharata. It seems Duryodhana mistook the floor, which is actually a pond, mistook the pond for a floor and fell into the water. And I have seen spiritual teachers talking like this, that Draupadi laughed at him and said, Anda ka beta, Anda. It is not there in the Mahabharata. She does not. She is a cultured, dignified princess. There's no way she will make an undignified statement like this. It is not there anywhere in the Mahabharata. You can search for it. All there is said is there is a peal of laughter heard from the women's quarters. That's all that is said. Who laughed, etc. Duryodhana, in his insecurity, must have attributed to Draupadi, as though he knew the laughter of every woman in the Antapura. Wouldn't have known who all are there. That is another myth, another non-understanding of Dharma. Now look at the shades. The shade will come with the game of dice. Before that attempt to kill them by house of luck, etc., I'm not going into. Yeah. The game of dice. Very interesting. How could you encourage gambling? It's a big question to ask. Dharma, shades of Dharma. No? And very interesting, Krishna tells in the Gita, I am the gambling in the gamblers. How do you reconcile gambling and Dharma? Everything has some learning to offer. I don't gamble on cards or something like that, but I gambled with my life. The risk-taking ability that is developed in gambling. Very important thing. As a king, you should know how to take risk. Therefore, to a certain extent, gambling was encouraged there. Risk-taking ability develops with gambling. So because of that, a certain amount of gambling was there in the lives of kings. Certain gambling was there. So Duryodhana invites them. Now gambling should be fair, but he plans that his uncle will be play for him and he will cheat the Pandavas. But he knows Bhishma will stand in the way. elderly man now, okay, 100-year-old, but not a problem. Mighty warrior. If Bhishma says something, nobody will go against that. So Duryodhana decides to go to Bhishma and say, Bhishma, tomorrow whatever happens, I have called them for the game, don't interfere. Bhishma throws him out of the room. So get lost. I will do what I think is right. Bhishma is already retired for the night. Okay, when this conversation happens. Few minutes later, Yudhishthira turns up with the same request. Grandson, whatever happens tomorrow, please don't interfere. He says, are you gone crazy? You know the plan to cheat me. He says, I know. But I don't mind it. Let them win. We'll make another kingdom on the strength of our arms. Let them win. Let him feel he has won. All this life he has been competing with us and coming out second best. At least once if he wins, the country is safe. Yeah, Duryodhana will become the ruler, but Vidura is there, you are there to keep him in check. Therefore, let it be. So Bhishma thinks, maybe there is some truth in it. Maybe there is some truth. This is okay. And then you all know what happened in the whole thing. It goes too far. Yeah. The disgraceful action in front of with Draupadi, the Sabha. At least there he should have acted, no? Bhishma should have stepped in. He waits. Why does he wait? The honor of one woman for 1,000 soldiers' death. How would you measure? How do you measure the honor of one woman or 1,000 people dying? How do you measure? Well, as a feminist, I would like to say, no, the honor of a woman is important. Yes. 1,000 deaths on the other hand. 1,000 families, 1,000 women widowed. What about that? Kingship is never easy. And even though Bhishma was not the king, he was the power behind the throne. So he keeps quiet for a long time. It's only when Krishna helped Draupadi with the Vastraharan thing, and in that the flash of lightning and sound, Bhishma picks up his axe and steps forward. Says, enough is enough. This has gone too far. Somewhere he has to put a stop to it. He let it in his decision that here it is, karke, here it is. Who are we to judge his timing? Remember, he has been asked not to interfere and he has said he will not interfere. Those days, if you're an Arya, your word was everything. There were no written agreements. There was only your word. Like Suresh introducing me, talked about my corporate training. Never once have I asked for a letter from a corporate saying this is what I will do and that's what you will give me. It's always a word and a shake hand and it was fine. Done. Your word should be as good as a legal document. That was Bhishma. So then, what is Dharma now? Black and white? A woman's honor? But it's weighed against the thousands of lives? Who's to say what? As a king, you have to make difficult decisions. Dharma's decisions, the higher you go up, the more difficult it is. We find it difficult not to interfere in our children's lives. What kingdom? Yeah. But Bhishma did that. Yeah. And he turns around to Dhritarashtra, who is still the official king. Said, son, isn't it time that you set things right? It is worded as a request, but it is an order. He says, yes, yes, I give them back their kingdom, I give them back this, everything, all that you saw. So Yudhishthira, if at all you're going to blame him for dharma, you can blame him for trying too hard for peace. Not more than that. Not more than that. Okay? That he walked an extra mile for the sake of peace. Yeah. If at all that was his fault. It is not the game of dice which people make a misunderstood statement. They think Yudhishthira was fond of gambling. Dharma Raja, Dharmaputra, he was called. He was called next to Vyasa, he was considered as the authority on Dharma. And that person would fall for a game of dice. I mean, where are our thinking gone? He walked that extra mile. For the sake of peace, he was willing to give up a kingdom. How many politicians are willing to do that? How many politicians are willing to do that? So are issues to think that dharma appears as black and white, but it is never black and white. When you learn about dharma, you learn in black and white things. That's when in ancient India, dharma was never taught as black and white. It was always taught through stories. Why? Because their stories were actually case studies. Shades of dharma came up. Like, who was wrong here? Yudhishthira for playing the game? Why? He tried to bring peace. If he had succeeded, he would have been praised, no? If he lost the kingdom and there was peace and harmony after that, he would have been praised for it. Which brings us to a very, very important point, especially in today's world. You cannot go too far in terms of peace. There's a time for peace, there's a time for war. You have to keep this in mind. It's not always peace, 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 peace. Can't go about saying ahimsa parama dharma. Every idiot who quotes this ahimsa paramo dharma forget the remaining part of the verse. Dharmo himsa sataivacha. For the sake of dharma, himsa is also should be considered as paramo dharma. We forget that. Hindus especially have lost the ability to stand up for what they are. We are all become neutralized Hindus. Good for nothing characters. Yeah. Important to keep this in mind. Okay, learn to stand up for your culture, for your heritage. If you don't, there will be nothing of your culture, heritage left. Your grandchildren will become Taliban. If that's what you want, fine. Let's go forward again. Okay. Other aspects of it. And when Draupadi is given the boon by Dhritarashtra, she has only for 2 things. My husbands should be freed and all their arms and weapons should be given back to them. Only 2 boons. Other things, I don't need anything more from you. She throws it back at Dhritarashtra's face. I don't need anything else. You're strong enough to take what we need to do. Dharma at work. Yeah. Don't take more than what you need from the society or from the king or from anyone else. That's an important thing. As a sadhu also, we follow that. Yeah. We don't take more than what we need from the society. Yeah. In fact, when people come and offer me, like one of my students came and offered me, Swamiji, 10 lakhs to donation to the ashram. I know he's a working person. I said, are you sure? For a working person, 10 lakhs is a big amount of money. The wife okay with it. The wife says, Swamiji, I'm happy he's doing that. Then I will accept it. Not otherwise. This is part of the game. This is part of the game. So, yes, Draupadi Vastaharanam was going too far in the whole thing. Then how come Duryodhana, Karna and all could do it? Sometimes in the midst of something, there's something like being carried away. Under the classical case of being carried away. In the midst of events. Okay? And Draupadi was a fiery woman. I'm sure all the men there has lusted after her sometime or the other. Duryodhana had, Karna had, was attracted to every woman was. So that's where it is. Let's go forward and see some of the events in the battle. Okay. Some of the events in the battle. Very interesting again. Bhishma makes one thing very clear. I have given my vow, I will stand with the whoever sits on the throne of Hastinapura. Yes. 3 generations back, I gave that word. I will still stand by that word. But one condition. What is that? I will not kill any of the Pandavas. But Duryodhana is happy with that. All right, Pandavas will take care of. Ashwatthama is there, Drona is there, Karna is there. Okay. That fine. So Bhishma fights in his own way. And Duryodhana feels, no, Bhishma is not doing enough. So one day he goes and tells Bhishma, you're not fighting enough. You're not doing enough. So Bhishma asks him, what do you want me to do in a day? Just finish one battalion. Duryodhana is a bit of an idiot. He didn't realize that Bhishma was doing that every day. If Bhishma had survived another few days, there would have been no Pandava army left. That's all. Yes, that's all. He does that in 1 hour. The whole battalion is wiped out in 1 hour. Then he goes to his tent and says, I've done my job for the day. I'm relaxing up. And the Pandava army mauls the Kaurava army in the remaining part of the day. So Duryodhana was running, please fight your way. This is where you learn to respect the person's potential. It's important. You know, all of us who run projects, this, that, etc., think, hey, we are right all the time. Are you? Very often I find this in Dharma. People behaving as though they are all right. That being right is one of the biggest distortions in human mind. Duryodhana also thought that. And Bhishma taught him that lesson right on the battlefield. You're not right all the time. And how can you ever compare Bhishma's strategy with Duryodhana's understanding? That's not possible. The killing of Abhimanyu. Yeah, everyone condemns it. I also condemn it. Yeah. At the same time, let us look at it from the other way. What choice did they have? If that youngster was not killed that day, the Chakravyuh would have been demolished. That youngster had to be killed. One man. He would have demolished the Chakravyuh. The Chakravyuha, the formation, would have been demolished by that one person. He didn't know the way of entering. He only knew the way of entering, not exiting. But still he would have demolished that. They had to kill. There was no other option in their hand. Wrong, wrong. Agreed. Half a dozen warriors together don't attack one single warrior. That's part of the game of war in those days. What is Dharma? But tell me, what options do they have? Yeah. We all root for the Pandavas, definitely. We're all rooting for them. Yeah. Yeah. But what is the other option? See the destruction of your whole formation? What would you like to do? He died a horrible death. He died a warrior's death, not a horrible death. He was the son of Agni. And Agni had said, I will give him to the Pandavas for 18 years. After that, I want him back here with me. So that's why Krishna also didn't save him. You think Krishna didn't know it will happen? And no, that is a vow given, promise given. Yeah. So, Dharma, black and white or shades? What would you do if one person was going to wipe off the whole village that you're staying in? Would you not gang up and finish off that person? You will do that for your family. Forget for your village, forget for the nation. Would you sit in judgment? Was that adharma? Yes. But how much? How much? Yeah. What about that other old man, Bhagadatta? He was so old that his forehead wrinkles would prevent him from seeing properly. He was not a Maharathi, he was an elephant warrior. And he was deadly on the battlefield. In fact, his forehead he would keep up by tying a scarf on it. By his wrinkles, he would push it up and tie a scarf on it and then come into the battlefield riding his elephant. How do you handle a man like this? And with this elephant, you would create havoc. Yeah. Even the Maharathis would find it difficult to stand up to him. Finally, Arjuna kills him. And you know how he does that? By shooting away the scarf first. He shoots away the scarf. So his vision is obstructed. Hey, that is not fair. That's not fair. Would you or would you not exploit the enemy's weakness? This is not a corporate deal. In corporate deals, you have to exploit the opponent's weakness. He's not your enemy, he's only an opponent. But you exploit his weakness, don't you? Forget it. I've seen this happening in families, exploiting each other's weaknesses, pushing each other's triggers. And we are talking of war. There we are talking of family relationship when you are exploiting. Here it is war. But here is weakness. Yes. How can you kill an old man? He's not an old man now. Now he's fighting the battle. And he's not the oldest man there also. Oldest man was Bhishma. So what do you say now? What is dharma? What is adharma? Understand shades. If you don't understand this, then the relativity of dharma is lost. And dharma is not absolute. Dharma is always relative. It's the relativity that makes it so important. Black and white, even a child can follow. Maturity is learning to follow the shades of gray that is there. And shades of gray are always there in life. Don't let that be a justification. Let that be a way for living. Then, who stopped? The king that stopped the other Pandavas from rushing in to help Abhimanyu. Arjuna makes that vow. Before the sunset next day, I'm going to kill him. And Drona is the head. Gives everyone just to protect the king that day. The whole focus of the whole army is to focus. And Krishna creates an illusion of sunset. And they all rejoice, and Arjuna shoots and kills him. Hey, that is not fair. That's not fair. You don't use illusions in warfare. In modern warfare, are not illusions used? Camouflaging is not an illusion. Half of warfare is illusions anyway. Take it from someone who has been there, done that. Half of warfare is illusions. Of course you will use. It's fine for the other side to see through that illusion and call the bluff. So there are many, many cases like this. Many cases like this. Let's come to the final one. Karna's death. Okay, Bhishma's death. Let's take Bhishma's death. You know, after a few days of the war, the Pandavas goes to Bhishma and says, Bhishma, as long as you are there, how will this war ever end? Bhishma laughs. He says, yes, as long as I am alive, the gates of Hastinapura are close to you. So Yudhishthira says, then Dharma will not work out. Dharma is that the usurper has to go. He says, yes, I agree with you fully. But you're still fighting for them. He says, yes, I am. Therefore, remove me from the scene. I will not give up my word, but I will remove me from the scene. Means kill me. How can we ever fight against you and win? So he turns to Krishna and says, Krishna, remind them of the vow that I have taken, that I'll never fight a woman or someone who was born as a woman. Transgender, wokeism, etc. was not acceptable in those days, okay? So that is why the only way of Dharma to win was this. And it is Bhishma himself who gives the permission to the Pandavas to do it. He says, I will live and die by my Dharma. But for greater Dharma to win, I have to die. And I'm willing to die rather than break my Dharma. That's why Shikandi is kept in front. When she sees Shikandi, lowers his bow. And Arjuna starts firing. With tears in his eyes, he's firing now. Letting loose. Okay, firing is a term for rifles and pistols. Let's loose arrows. And Bhishma laughingly says, Neme bhana Shikandinaha, Neme bhana Arjuna. These are not Shikandi's arrows. Shikandi's arrows bounce off my armor. These arrows, half these arrows are Arjuna's. Why? They pierce my armor and burn my flesh. Can you imagine an old man saying that, standing in battlefield, and he's identifying which arrows are for whose? But before he can lift up the bow again, he's covered, he's a pin cushion, arrow cushion, and he falls. Why? That's what he wanted, Veeragati, to fall on the battlefield, not anywhere else. He had already lived a life. No, according to some historians, he was 125 years at that time. Some put his age as 165. How long do you want to live? He wants to live when he could still fight. He could still function as a warrior. And for the sake of Dharma, he had to be moved for the scene. For greater Dharma to win, he had to retire from the scene. Can you see a better example of Dharma at work than in Bhishma's action? Yeah, spend a minute. Think of that man. One of the greatest eras at the end of the Dwapara Yuga. Then let's come to Karna's death. Okay, Arjuna is criticized heavily for it. Karna's chariot wheel gets stuck in the mud. So in modern battle, are you going to say, hey, my tank is stuck in the mud, let me get my unstuck my tank before you fire? Will you say that? You will deliberately make the soil muddy so that the tank will get stuck. One reason we did not move into Bangladesh in 71 in May, June was because our tanks would have got stuck in the rain. And Bangladesh, half of Bangladesh would have become a marshland at that time. That's why we waited until December to move in, so that the tank won't get stuck. You use geography to your favor to create history. Anyway, so Karna's chariot got stuck. So Karna appeals to Arjuna. This is stuck, let me get it out. So Arjuna actually lowers his bow. Even though Krishna says, shoot, he lowers. That time, Karna fires at him, an Agniksha missile, which literally stuns Arjuna. Because he was not expecting that. He had lowered his bow. And Karna jumps out. And that time, Krishna says, shoot him down. And Arjuna does it. Oh, not fair. Who said so? Who said not fair? As I said, in modern warfare, will he say that? My tank is stuck. Don't fire. The tank is stuck. Good. You're a sitting target for me. Number one. This is called Shatru Bodha. Very important to understand. In the Mahabharata, as well as in a more modern work called Sun Tzu and the Art of War, this is one thing that is said. Know yourself and know the enemy. 100 battles, 100 victories. That knowing your enemy is called Shatru Bodha. Understanding your enemy. Very, very important. We lost this during Mughal invasions. 18 times Mahmud Ghazni attacked India and Prithviraj Chavan won 18 times against him. What is this, a cricket match or a football match? 18 times somebody is attacking you, you're defeating him and letting him go back. So that next year he can come back again. What nonsense is this? Law of averages will catch up with you. He won once and then that was the end of Prithviraj Chavan and their empire. Shatru Bodha. Understand your enemy. You are fighting the dharmic way with another dharmic person. If it was between two kings in India, the defeated king would have said, okay, fine. No war for the next 25 years. But Muhammad of Ghazni was not like that. So Shatru Bodha is necessary. We lost against the Mughals only because Shatru Bodha was not there. Because we didn't realize that they are fighting adharmically, you're fighting dharmically. So should you become adharmic? No, but you have to be enough to learn to tackle adharma. Adharma should be tackled. Adharma should be tackled. You know enough for that. I'm not saying completely adharmic. No. Follow dharma, but learn enough to tackle the enemy who's following adharma. Don't show your gallantry with him. Once he went off, came back again. Second time he came back again. Third time, Prithviraj should have finished him off. Enough. Wipe out the king and his army. Finish it off. King, raider, and his army. Finish it off. There would have been no problems in India. If the Mughals didn't come in, the British also wouldn't have come in. But British also know Shatru Bodha. They came saying, we are coming to trade. And they slowly started taking over. No Shatru Bodha. Otherwise, how will a kingdom like ours be taken off? Because we did not live by the lessons of the Mahabharata. Karna's death, Bhishma's death are typical understanding of how to use Dharma. especially karnas. Shatru bodha is necessary. Yeah. If Shatru bodha is not there, what war are you going to win? You're not fighting. You're fighting to establish dharma, not for the power and wealth of a kingdom. You think they enjoyed the kingdom after that? 10% of the population died. Every Kshatriya house there was widows and children. Rehabilitation was necessary. Next 30 years was spent in that. At least 20 years, because the children had to grow up and take charge and do things. Yeah. So it was a lot of work. And very often Draupadi was at the forefront of that work. Because necessary. Rebuilding the nation was necessary. War is always a high paying thing. Very costly affair, war is. That's why you'll try to avoid it. That's why Yudhishthira played that game. Says, if in a game it can be solved, let it be solved. How nice it will be if problems between Pakistan and India can be solved in a cricket match. Do you think it'll happen? Shatru bodha is not there among our politicians. 50 years ago, more than 50 years ago, we helped Bangladesh get its freedom. I'll tell you something. I spoke to a lot of the senior commanders at that time. Okay, very, very senior people who were there in strategy and decision making. All of them said it, that this is only a temporary solution. 50 years down the line, we will have problems with them. For 50 years, 40, 50 years, we'll have peace. After that, we'll have problems. Our politicians were of a different opinion. That time, politicians. Indira Gandhi and the whole Congress party was a different opinion. And in India, the political leadership that makes the decision to go to war or not the professional soldier. Because we are democratic, isn't it? But these leaders don't know, like Sam Manakshok said, they don't know the difference between a rifle and a gun, or a gorilla and a gorilla. Those both may look the same sometimes. All the leaders. Because I was a very enthusiastic young volunteer during that time. I spoke to some of them. I was lucky I had access to them. They all said, no, 40, 50 years we'll have the problem, but 40, 50 years will be peaceful, which is good enough now. 93,000 soldiers as prisoners. Did you use them as a bargaining chip? 40 prisoners over 100 prisoners that Hamas has taken in Israel, they're using as a bargaining chip. We had 93,000 soldiers. Could we have not solved the problem of Kashmir using them as a bargaining chip? They were treated well of course they were treated well. They are prisoners. They will be treated with all the human rights, everything, except for they'll be treated well. But bargaining chip is different from not treating them well. Shatru bodha. These are the lessons of Dharma from the Mahabharata, some of them. There are lots more. There are a lot more. I can go on for days on this topic. Therefore, one has to understand that Dharma is universal in content, relative in application. This is the most important lesson here. Dharma is universal in content. Honesty is honesty across the world. Relative in application. Okay. Trust, independence, etc. are universal in content. Ahimsa, universal. Relative in application. So if you understand this, and how do you understand the relativity of application? Case studies. Like Mahabharata is a huge case study. You take any story anywhere in the Mahabharata, you will get this thing of Dharma. Ramayana is no less, but Ramayana, the Dharma is more personal level. Mahabharata is more at a social level. That's the only difference. The bigger epic. Ramayana is only 24,000 verses, whereas Mahabharata is about 1 lakh of verses. 4 times the amount. Now the question is, how do we ever read the Mahabharata? Difficult. Because authentic translations, very few. Everyone writes about the Mahabharata, but everyone writes their own interpretations of it. Unfortunately. And their interpretations are limited because people who are writing are not necessarily expert in the field of Dharma or Vedanta. Therefore, will be limited. They're writers, storytellers. Therefore, they take liberties with the story. Even though Mahabharata is not a story, it's itihasa, it is history. Ramayana and Mahabharata are histories. They have to be treated with that respect. Otherwise, anyone can write any nonsense. But that's not how it is. It has to be treated with the respect it deserves. Therefore, if anyone wants to read, go to the original. Gita Press Gorakhpur has both a Hindi translation of the Mahabharata and an English translation of the Mahabharata. 1 lakh verses. Okay, you'll find the most authentic translation there. Most authentic text and translation. Translation is poor because many of the scholars there don't understand English well. So, for the quality of the translation will be poor, but the verses are authentic. The storyline will be authentic. No modifications taken. Okay, Sri Kirti has asked the question. Ahimsa, paramo dharma, dharmo himsa, not himself. Dharmo himsa tataivacha. Where is the sloka mentioned? All over the Mahabharata. You know, it is mentioned so often in the Mahabharata. Okay. Yeah. Dozens of places. You go make a Google search on the Mahabharata, you get dozens of places where the sloka is mentioned. It's not just in one place. Yeah. Because it's an important verse. We think ahimsa, ahimsa when it comes to dharma. But ahimsa sometimes can be carried too far. All these advocates of ahimsa, I ask them, you find your daughter is being raped by somebody and there's a knife lying down there. What are you going to do? Say ahimsa, paramo dharma and keep quiet? Not me. Okay? It doesn't have to be someone known to me also. I will respond. Then another question is, can you please mention the whole sloka? The whole sloka is this. Ahimsa, paramo dharma, dharmo himsa tataivacha. A very small sloka. That's the sloka. Then Pujya Swamiji also wrote a commentary on the Mahabharata. No, he has not written a commentary on the Mahabharata, but like this, he has also mentioned a few points and given a few talks on the Mahabharata. He has not written a commentary. Commentary on the Mahabharata is huge. And Mahabharata does not require a commentary as long as you handle a few naughty points like this. Naughty with a K. Okay, not naughty with an N. Few points like this, that's enough. You don't need to handle every because the story. What requires handling in the Mahabharata is the Gita. There are half a dozen Gitas in the Mahabharata. Those have to be explained and things like that. Like Hamsa Gita, Brahmar Gita, Bhagavad Gita. A lot of Gitas are there like that. Therefore, those have to be handled. Can you please throw light on why the other Pandavas are silent on Draupadi Vastraharana? Because they had already become slaves. In the game of dice, they had already become slaves to Duryodhana, and therefore they had no right. They had no right to object. Otherwise, they would have objected long back. You think Bhima is going to keep quiet? Putting your wife as a bait in gambling, is it allowed? Definitely not. Definitely not. That was a mistake Yudhishthira made. You can only gamble away your properties. A wife is a human being. A child is a human being. They cannot be put onto the game of dice. It was wrong to ask, it was wrong to agree. We also hear that Karna was discriminated on the basis of birth. Is it factual, or was he disarmed of his armor, etc., when he had by birth, by making him vulnerable, leading to his death? There were people who looked down on Karna because he was raised by a chariot. There were some. There was no real discrimination. There is only one place that discrimination is mentioned in the Mahabharata. That was when he challenged Arjuna for a mortal combat. Now, Arjuna is the prince. He is an asset to the house of Kurus. Okay, the whole dynasty was the Kuru dynasty. The question is the person who is challenging for a mortal combat, is he an adventurer, or does he have the same thing to risk? The country has a lot to risk when Arjuna goes into a mortal combat one-on-one with somebody else. Does the opponent have the same to lose, or is an adventurer can gain everything without risking anything much? So there they would say, if you're challenging someone for a mortal combat, you have to be able to risk the same level. Life both are risking. That is not a problem. That's accepted among the Kshatriyas. But what other things you are risking? So there is only time when Karna was not allowed to have a mortal combat with Arjuna, because he didn't have enough to risk, like how the country was risking if Arjuna went for a mortal combat. That is the only time that, if at all, it is a discrimination, you can talk about it as a discrimination. Number one. Number two, yes, Indra, Arjuna's father, was worried that Karna's invincible armor will make him invincible. Therefore, and Karna had an ego issue in terms of when it has his vulnerability, that he always considered himself as a dani, that nobody will go to him and ask him for something and he will not say no to that. So Indra exploited that. Remember, this is war. Your weakness will be exploited. You can't crib against that. So we are asking Indra why he exploited. I did it for my son. He will say that. Not that the justification, but this is what it is.
Swamiji?
Yeah.
One last question. There are more questions, but let's tackle that later because we want to be on schedule. One last question is there is somebody who's asked, how do we reach this explanation on war and dharma to academic institutions? How can we make it, is there any way of making it part of, I presume the question is, how do we make this part of academics? Is it possible to teach youngsters?
See, as long as we are saying education is supposed to be secular, and in the name of secularism, this is kept out, it is not possible. If this is acceptable, we are trying to change that politically, and we hope by the end of this term of the Prime Minister that will happen. Otherwise, you do what I have been doing, or Swamini has been doing, and other of my Gurubhais have been doing. That is, we conduct children's programs, youth groups, etc., and give them that exposure.
As usual, Swamiji, you have tackled a edgy subject with two sides to the sword always, whereas you are very clear that while dharma might be absolute, its application is relative, and I think that's the lesson we should take away from this, because all of us are always conflicted on this issue, because what is right in one situation may not be right in another situation. So, but thank you for handling it so well and bringing in the Mahabharata as a story, keeping in view our theme of Gita Jayanti, bringing so many lessons from the Mahabharata as to how dharma was followed in spite of what it looked like from the outside. As people who don't know the story in detail or don't know the motivation behind how it was actually, dharma was actually followed in most cases in the Mahabharata. Thank you once again, Swamiji, for a wonderful talk and really grateful.